Welcome back, YouTubians. Welcome back to the Openly Occultic Book Club. We've been reading the Complete Book of Numerology, and currently we've been in Chapter 5 discussing the different numbers. And I'm excited to get back to it. I'm glad that you guys are here today to join me as we go over this important information, right? Numerology is very, very important. And lately, what have I been doing in the meantime? I've been Googling sine waves, and because on the calculator it says sin, right? So we all have heard that we're born into sin. And I'm saying, we're born into a sine wave. And really, when it comes to sine waves, it's dealing with one tone, right? Not harmony. I looked it up, I Googled it, Google sine waves, sin. You know what I mean? And just in the word sine waves, the shortened version of it is sin, and that's on your calculators, right? And so knowing about frequencies and that all of life is frequency and magnetism, I said, wow, when it comes to astrology, we're dealing with multiple frequencies, right? Because when you're dealing with astrology, your natal chart, your birth chart, you're dealing with the time and location and date that you were manifested on this plane, that you came through your mother's, portal, if you will, right? So once you were birthed into this world and manifested here on this physical plane, that's what the birth chart, your natal astrological birth chart is calculating. So it's talking about where was the sun when you came through the portal? Where was the moon when you came through the portal, right? We're more than our sun signs, right? I'm a Gemini, but I'm much more than just a Gemini because the moon was, I have a moon sign, where was Venus when I came through the portal? Where was Mars? Where was Saturn? Where was Uranus and Pluto? And Neptune and what have you, right? And Chiron, my favorite, right? The wounded healer. So that's astrology. And so I know that that's when I'm reading my natal chart, I know I'm dealing with multiple frequencies combined together to make, the who I am, my personality, my quirks and what have you. Um, Even my karma, right? Things that I've overcome in past lives, and I'm here to strengthen it, or now I have other things to learn because and now I get good karma for certain things, being a generous person in the past, the planet Jupiter, luck, expansion, growth. So these things are brought up in my natal chart, my birth chart. And if you want one, just drop me a line, let me know that you want your natal chart, because I've read a lot of different natal charts, and the one that I like, where I get from my source, it's very in depth. It's very in depth. Mine's is 24 pages long. I don't think I've seen anything less than 15 pages long. And it's just going over each planet, each of your aspects, right? Whether your moon harmonizes with Saturn or not, or is discordant or not. So you get all that kind of information. But back to what I'm saying about sin, you being born into sin, this word sine wave is talking about one main harmony. I mean, one main frequency, excuse me. There is no harmony. One main frequency. So I said, hey, we're talking about your life path number, because how do you get your life path number? You add up the numbers of the day you were born. It's just one thing, one energy, the energy of the day you were born. So you were born into this one tone. That's your life path number. That's my life path number. I'm a life number 7, right? Life path number 7. So just something I was going over this last week in between, reading with you guys. Been thinking about that and say, yes, yes, we're born into sin, a sine wave. Absolutely. Numerologically, it lines up, right? So when we left off, we were reading number 6. So we'll finish chapter 5, which is going over these numbers. We'll finish that up today. The number 7, the number 8, and the number 9, right? And then I'm looking forward to what's coming after chapter 5, because it starts talking about arrows and something else, destiny numbers, and all kinds of other stuff they were bringing up. You'll see as we read these next 3 numbers, you'll see. So there's more, way more to come. We're only in chapter 5, and We're only on page 34 of the book. There's 205 pages, minus, some pages for the glossary or whatever is at the end, appendix and what have you. So we're on chapter 7. On number 7, excuse me, right? And I want to thank you guys for joining me here. Absolutely. If you can, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe, right? Share the video. Let other people know we're doing this here, and it's very informative, as it is. And I think highly necessary for us to have a higher quality of life. It's best to work with the energy and know the energy, right? Because all of life is energy. It's frequency and magnetism. Frequency or vibration, same thing, and magnetism. We want to be harmonious. We don't want to have to be kicking against the pricks. We don't have to fight against the current, if you will, right? I'm not playing my fire sound effect for this episode. So let's just go ahead and hear this episode without the fire crackling in the background, right? I was playing it because it just reminds us that fire, the Kundalini fire within us, it sounds like electricity. It is electricity, right? The sacred fire. So I play it, and it sounds like, we're around a campfire reading. But I'm not going to play it for this episode because I want you guys to chime in and let me know if we should keep it or not. So leave it in the comment section. Should we keep the fire sound effect or do away with it? It just popped in my mind. Let me ask my people what they want. So we're on number 7. Let's remember what we're talking about here as I read this, okay? So as the highest number on the physical plane, right? This is the chart. This is what it's looking like. What they're reading, what they're talking about in this book. They're using this chart, right? And they said that as the highest number of the physical plane, the number 7 represents a special function of human life. It indicates the amount of learning one must amass, generally through that unforgettable form of personal experience called sacrifice. Its deeper philosophical significance lies in 2 domains. Physically, 7 represents practical activity as the means for consummate learning and teaching. Spiritually, 7 is the temple number, the repository of philosophy, truth, and wisdom. This further indicates the need to detach from worldly possessions in order to integrate body and soul. Interesting, right? So 7 spiritually is also the temple number, the repository of philosophy, truth, and wisdom. But yeah, absolutely. I get what they're saying about the 7 being, it's on the physical domain, and it physically, it represents the practical activity as the means for consummate learning and teaching, right? It's on the physical plane. I get it. I do. I get it. And then learning. We're reading. You know what I'm saying? This is on the physical plane. Absolutely. I'm a life number 7. Um, Here in this way that they're teaching about numerology, which is the Pythagorean numerology. This is not the original way I personally learned numerology. All I did is write out the digits of my birth date. So I'm born on June 19, 1980. So I'll write 6 plus the 19, right? 6 plus 1 plus 9, and then 1980. So 6 plus the 19th, 1 plus 9 plus 1 plus 9 plus 8, because the 1980. We don't need to add the 0. Um, and then that number you get from that, you add those digits up again, each single digit up again. And really what you're doing is a kind of magic. You're kind of adding to subtract because you're reducing your number down to a single digit. That single vibration of the date that you were born. So you were born into this sin. This is the cross you bear. I'm a life number 7. I'm a researcher. I'm always researching and reading. This is the thing that I love the most. This is what I'm here to do. Soak up knowledge. It's a truth seeking energy. It's a spiritual walk and a truth seeking walk, you know? So I can understand how the seven can be on the physical plane. They're showing it in this chart right here with this tic tac toe symbol. And you can have multiple sevens or multiple ones or multiple fours in your birth date, and you just add an additional four into the four box or an additional seven into the seven box, right? So this is more than how I originally learned, and it's very interesting to me. I'm like, wow, okay. So a lot of truth seeking, which means a lot of reading. And then once you start to know the truth and you're uncovering lies and starting to see conspiracy theories, well, now you become a watchman. Now you start to ring the bell, ring the alarm. Now I'm telling other people. So there's a teaching involved. All this is on the physical plane. You see? So that's what's up. I love it. I'm saying, you see, for me, I'm like, yeah, I see, I see. Okay. And also learning through personal experience called sacrifice. Because the number seven represents a special function. This has to happen in a person's life, whether it's in this life or or another life. You're going to have to go through this vibration. And what does this vibration bring? Well, it indicates the amount of learning that one must amass. Generally, through that unforgettable form of personal experience. So, learning through personal experience called sacrifice. I sacrifice my time and my energy to learn, to research, and to learn things, experience, you know. So it's a beautiful thing, this numerology, guys, you know. So that whole born into sin, what do you think of that? Leave a comment. We need to talk about it. And meet me in the Openly Occultic Book Club chat room as well. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's open. So we could talk about it there if you'd like to, you know. Um, Sacrifice is not to be avoided. It's a wonderful opportunity for cleansing and refining. It's when we fail to practice sacrifice voluntarily that the universe sees to it that such a purification takes place. It's best to take control of what we sacrifice in our lives. That way, we're more aware of the ultimate purpose of the experience rather than lamenting it as an undesirable lesson, right? Yeah. So this life number seven I'm living is one where I'm aware of the ultimate purpose of and have grown more and more aware. Reading this is making me even more aware. You see, I get the reason for the sacrifice. I get the reason for the purpose of this experience, the ultimate purpose of it all, you know. It's amazing, you guys. You think you can learn everything you need to learn in one lifetime? And then what about the babies that pass away? Do you think a soul, a spirit, can learn everything it needs to learn for life? Because there's all kinds of lessons you have to learn. You got to learn boundaries. You got to learn self-control. And you got to learn in general. You need to learn truth. And if there's a truth, if such a thing as truth exists, then such a thing as lies exist. So you got to learn discernment, right? You got to learn how to trust your intuition. You got to learn about the magic of life. You got to learn the elements, what makes up life. We got to learn the body. We're learning that here now as well, right? The Kundalini energy, and just in general, we want to learn about the body, the lymphatic system, the nervous system, all that. We want to learn about the body. So you got to learn about that. If you're going to be in a body, it behooves you to learn how the body works. It's a miracle, this creation. There's electricity in it, there's plasma in it, animating it, and once you die, you give up the ghost, you give up that electricity, that God within you. So life is amazing, and there's so much to learn. Do you think you can learn it in one lifetime? um and then what about the babies who pass away? What about the people who pass away before their time? You see what I'm saying? Like, everything is divinely ordained. So I feel like if you take a step back, there's a bigger picture happening. There is wholeness and balance in it. So, but these are things we could talk about. These are things I love to talk about, right? This is why we're here doing this. So I'm looking for my tribe, people that are into this just like me. And we could talk for hours about this type of stuff, right? We're trying to live our life like this with this information in mind, right? We're changing our whole life. Our lifestyle, our diets, we're doing all this type of stuff here around here at the Openly Occultic Podcast, Openly Occultic Book Club. So if that's you, please leave a comment. Let's talk about these things. What do you think about this whole sin thing? And what do you think about, do you think a person can learn all they need to learn in one life? Because I can see the need for a person to have to experience the vibration of the number seven. We just call it the number seven, you know what I mean, for lack of better words. But to experience that vibration, you know, I can see the need to have to experience that in your life. And I'm not talking about this one life. I believe that we have to live many, many lives to learn what we need to learn, on this plane here on Earth. And then what about the other amazing places there could be in the universe? So this isn't the only school. We're learning what we need to learn here, the physics here on Earth, the laws here on Earth. But where if you go to another place that we only dream about or another realm, like we hear about in sci-fi movies where the gravity is different and the trees are different and everything. It's a whole different kind of chemistry, all kind of new set of elements, a whole nother makeup for the body, maybe. That's a whole nother lesson. There's so many possibilities. Time is infinite. There is no beginning and there is no end. You know what I mean? So it's like, all the possibilities, so it's so many different ways that life could express itself. Yeah. And then you'd have to learn how to live in it, right? And you can't do that in one shot. What about if you don't have a seven on your birth chart? Like me, in this way that they're doing the birth chart, all I do is put a six, a one, a nine, a one again, a nine again, and an eight. So there's no seven when I do it this way, like they're showing here. There's no number seven. But when I do it the way I do, the other way I learned how to do it, to reducing the number down to a single digit, that's when I get down to just a life number seven. And the number before that seven was a 34. So life of number seven by way of 34. Because there's multiple ways to get to the seven, right? A 5-1, a one, a six, a 5-2, a 6-1, a 3-4, and then the reverse, a 4-3, a 1-6, and a 2-5. You see what I'm saying? These are different symbols. When you're looking at it, it's different, so it carries a different vibration, and that's what I know. But here, I don't have a seven on my birth chart. So this is me that we're talking about. Well, what if you don't have a number seven on your birth chart? Lack of a seven on the birth chart reveals that either the person has evolved through that form of sacrifice in recent past lives and is no longer in need of that type of learning, except during the personal year of seven, which we all experience, or the pyramid peak of seven. Surely they'll tell us more about that later on in the book. Alternatively, and more commonly, it implies that the person does not have the necessary philosophical understanding of sacrifice and has to put practical effort into achieving it. Hmm. So, this seven that we're discussing is about sacrifice, the learning process, and sacrifice. Okay. It still sounds like me here, though. You see what I'm saying? Because I do have a life. I am a life number seven. That's the date that's the energy of the day I was born. So the sin I was born into is the seven, right? For lack of better words, the sin. We're going to change our mind about not thinking religiously when we hear this. The sine wave I was born into. As part of the vital learning process of life, if you have 1 7 in your box, as part of the vital learning process of life, sacrifices in matters of health, love, money, or possessions will be encountered when this number appears on the birth chart. This is only intended as part of the soul's unfolding. The resultant sacrifices are often bemoaned by the sufferers without realizing the vital role of giving up to acquire. By subtracting, you add. Hmm? And when I was doing my numerology, I was adding and ended up subtracting, reducing it. There's a magic in between all this, right? We like magical things around here, right? So the sufferer often bemoans this sacrificing, right? Without realizing the vital role of giving up to acquire. You have no idea what all is to come once you sacrifice these things to learn and get into alignment, right? Get into alignment. As we release our identity with physical possessions, we learn the difference between preference and obsession. Hmm. So far as health and love are concerned, any loss in these areas is intended to strengthen and purify our habits and attitudes. See? Because I recently, 2 years ago, almost 3 years ago, was diagnosed a diabetic. And that's to strengthen and purify my habits. I got to quit smoking cigarettes. I know it. I had to quit drinking as much, and I did, you know. So, because all that alcohol can turn into sugar, carbs turns into sugar. So, eating more of a holistic diet, right, and adding herbs to nourish my organs, right? So, it absolutely forces me in a way to strengthen myself and purify my habits and attitudes. Man, can y'all see that? This is incredible. Now, if we're to fulfill our purpose here on earth, we must ensure that our health is properly nourished. Absolutely. In love, all too often, we confuse desire with unconditional love. Remember, we can never lose if we practice unconditional love, but we rarely retain love when we associate it with emotional demands and expectations. Mm, what a word. What a word. What if you have 2 sevens? Because we found the pattern is as you double up on this same frequency, add that same frequency to it, so now it's twice as strong, and then triple it up, it's 3 times as strong, and so on and so forth. It starts to unwind, it starts to get a little erratic. That energy starts to get a little erratic, and this is when you introduce instability. This is when mental instability is interjected into the person's life. So we found that out, and we could see why. So let's see this pattern unfold, continue to unfold in this life number, well, in this number 7, having this number 7 on your birth chart, right? Let's see how that goes. 2 sevens clearly implies the intensity of the lessons to be undertaken. We invariably find that the lessons occur through loss in 2 of the 3 basic areas of life: health, love, or money possessions. The intensity of the experience involving sacrifice is intended to focus the individual upon the deeper philosophical understandings of life. This stimulates our interest in the metaphysical, with which comes enlightened powers for healing, guidance, and compassion. Wow. You see how this works? The intensity of the experience involving sacrifice is intended, here's why, to focus to, the individual upon the deeper philosophical understanding of life. And while doing that, that stimulates our interest in the metaphysical, with which comes enlightened powers for healing, guidance, and compassion. There's a lot that comes with knowing about this energy work, y'all. I call this energy work. It's part of the energy work. Numerology, astrology, human design. It's all part of the energy work. It's metaphysical. They call it metaphysical. It's occultic. They call it occultic. Yeah, because you need to learn it. Let's remind ourselves of the definition of occult. Okay, let's not forget what occult means, guys. I'm gonna pull it up. Right? This is occult. It just means information is available only to the initiate. It's a secret. It's mysterious. If you went in the emergency room today, open heart surgery, it would be a mystery for you to operate on this patient. You don't want to kill him, but they're going to have to teach you something before they just throw you in there, right? It's a mystery to you. It's a secret how the doctors do what they do. That's all it means. This is not something spooky. We don't need to be scared of this. It just means information set aside for people that are into learning this type of stuff because it's not something, that you're just going to learn overnight. You got to learn it. You know what I mean? And we're talking about energy work. So that's beautiful to me, the things we're learning and the promise of what all you acquire in learning these things, right? What all you get for the sacrifice of learning about these things. I love that. What do you guys think? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it personally. Meet me if you love it too. So now we know why the intensity of the experience, why the sacrifice, Now we know. It helps you focus on deeper things. You start to meditate. What is going wrong? What's going on? What's happening in my life? You get to meditate and stuff, right? You start to be introspective, deep thinking about processes, and it actually starts to stimulate your interest in metaphysical things. Mm-hmm. Yep. And then while learning that, you get enlightened powers, baby. Your superpowers start to click in. Yes. Superpowers like telepathy. I'm a little telepathic, y'all. When not living positively, these people fail to develop that indispensable philosophical understanding of life, right? Which they are so capable of, though. Instead, they constantly complain about loss, blame others for their problems, and accuse life of being grossly unfair and handling them a dirty deal, handing them a dirty deal, right? Got some bad cards. I got some bad cards in this life. They become grumpy, pitiful individuals that most people prefer to avoid. Hmm. So we got to look out for that. What can you do to stay positive? Well, you can go to cedargroveherbs.com, get some crystals, get some herbs, you know, and you can use the code Pure Love, all caps, no spaces, and get 15% off, right? So do what you can. There's plenty of tools to start to vibe high, right? Tuning force, frequencies. We have plenty of books in store as well if you need to learn about all the tools at your disposal, right? The weapons of your warfare, right? In this battle. What if you have 3 sevens? Superficially, 3 sevens in a birth chart appear to result in particularly sad lives brought about by heavy loss in all 3 areas of life: health, love, and money possessions. But the sadness is often more unsettling to the close associate than it is to the sufferer, who, with such a depth of philosophical understanding, recognizes the purpose behind the events. So they just like, hey, it's a sad life. It is what it is. They're not as sad as a person sitting back watching their life, all the sacrifice, all the things they're losing. But this person is actually deeply philosophical because of all that. So they recognize the purpose behind it. It's like gold tried in the fire, ain't it? Burning away the impurities. Hmm. Such loss tests these people's powers of fortitude and compassion, endowing them with enormous strength of character. This can make for a truly remarkable person, a valuable friend whose outlook on life grows with maturity, displaying almost infinite depths of wisdom. Such is only the case with those people with three sevens who recognize opportunity in every challenge. Opportunity. I wake up in the morning and say, hey, today I have the opportunity to do this or the opportunity to do that. I'm thankful to have the opportunity to, so that word, try to keep that in your vocabulary. You got to change your perspective. We got to change our mind, y'all. For those negative souls who prefer to languish in the mud holes of life and rely on sympathy to justify their existence, the tendency towards depression and antisocial behavior loses them many friends and further exasperates their problems. Mm, okay, okay. What if you have four sevens? Because we see we're doubling up on this energy, and the energy is sacrifice. There's a reason why. It's to purify, and give you strength of character, right? So you're losing the things being sacrificed is your health, your love, and your money, right? Your possessions. Mm. So you see some homeless people out there on the streets. And you're like, man, you're an angel. How many of them are life number sevens with three or four number sevens in their birth chart? How many of them are that? They know why they're there. They understand there's a purification going on. They live in a homeless life. You pass by them and you shake your head, and sometimes you're really sad, and sometimes you're aggravated. And they know. They feeling all the feels. They know how humans are. They know how humanity can be. They right out there in it on purpose. It's a sacrifice to build strength of character. So, you know, you could be tenderhearted in life, but in this world, there's all kind of animals at the watering hole. You better stay on your guard. So you got to learn that. There's all kind of lessons to learn in this life. You got to learn about humanity, about people, and how fucked up it could be, right? You got to learn those things and still be able to stand on your own, stand on your square, not let it crumble you. Everything is everything, you know? Everything is everything. So if you go to jail because you're a criminal and you don't have self-control and you like to grape everybody, that plot and plan to grape people and trap people, when you go to jail for the rest of your life, you'll have the opportunity. What an opportunity you have now, right? To learn other lessons. You just get an opportunity. Life is lifing. There's plenty of people there. They learning too. They're learning too. A different kind of lesson, you know? So they have an opportunity. Isn't life something? The universe, boy. Life be lifing. So what if you have four fours? Lecturing in Toronto, Canada, during the month of July 1977, I felt deep compassion for the infants born on the 7th, 17th, and 27th, as well as the parents who had no idea of the problems that they would need to face with such children. Unexpectedly, I received word from a dear friend of mine back home in Sydney that he had become the proud father of a firstborn on July 27th, 1977, and what problems they have all experienced since. Fortunately, no more souls will incarnate with four sevens until July 7th, 2077. Mm, okay. To both the children and the parents of children with four sevens, exceedingly careful help is necessary, else all will feel the burden of such compounded sacrifice, right? What if you're a parent of a child who has to experience bad health? Damn. Oh my God, y'all. I'm a life number seven, and my mom had bad health. She had a bad back problem. She passed away when I was 20 from a bad combination of the medicine. I'm a life number 7. She might have been 2 or her life number 8. She celebrated her birthday on February 7th and February 8th. Uh, but if she was born February 7th, she would have been a life number 7. We see she would have had a 7 in her birth chart. Um, so you're dealing with sacrifices of love, health, and money. Man, what if you're the child? Because that just blew my mind. Like, yo, what if she's not a life number 7? And here I am, her child, and I'm a life number 7, and I'm having to learn the lessons of bad health. God damn. Mm. Oh my God. Somebody come listen to this. Damn. Oh wow. Oh wow. You see, this why we read this stuff. It's helping us learn, it's helping us heal, and work through all kind of traumas and layers of things that have happened in our lives, particularly those of us that are middle aged, right? And we're going to adjust our lives, learn these things, incorporate it into our lives, and teach the babies, right? The children, our children will grow up knowing these things because we're going to teach them. So this is amazing. Mm, mm, mm. So, to both the children and the parents of children with 4 sevens, exceedingly careful help is necessary, else all will feel the burden of such compounded sacrifice. Yet, once understood, as I've endeavored to explain here, it can be an exciting learning experience. A change in attitude is necessary to see the half full rather than the half empty glass. Man, can y'all just give me a hug in the comments? Can you give me a purple heart? Because you just saw what I connected with me being a life number 7 and my mom and her health. Can you guys show me some love? Let me know you hear me out here. Because, man, I'm going to be meditating on that, thinking about that, talking to my girlfriend about that. This is, mm, I need a hug. And then what? Mother's Day is coming up. Oh, man, that's deep. I need all the loves, guys. Care Bears care, right? Where's my Care Bears? Give me some love in the comments. Some loves and some rainbows. Dang. The heightened philosophical understanding that attends such a life provides wonderful potential for rapid growth in spiritual consciousness. And here we are. Mm. But certain basic training is necessary for this to occur. The training being in the form of essential personal disciplines by which the person learns to gain empire over the self, sovereignty, as Pythagoras so eloquently phrased it. Right? You got to learn sovereignty. Learn you and your own personal energies. I encourage you guys all to jump into the openly occult, the human design playlist I have on the page. Listen, learn about human design. Start if you're here, learn about human design as well, so that you can learn sovereignty over yourself instead of letting everybody externally tell you about you. Okay, and having to go to everybody else instead of yourself for the answers. All right, what about number 8? What if you have a number 8? Or what of the number 8? Well, as the most active number of the soul plane, let's look at it. As the most active number on the soul plane, the number 8 exerts a dual influence. Spiritually, it's the number of wisdom. Physically, it's the number of active independence. Symbolically, 8 appears as the double 4, the double square, one atop the other. This elevates some of the organizational and practical aspects of the 4 onto the higher plane of expression, revealing the close affinity between the 4 and 8 though they are on two totally different planes, right? Both are on different planes. Birth charts without an 8 indicate that these people have to deliberately apply themselves to achieve that desirable level of wisdom and independence that makes life more fulfilling and rewarding. I have an 8. I have 1 8, right? June 1980. Yeah, I have 1 8. These people are the most methodical and meticulous when living positively. On the other hand, apathy and instability prevail when they exist negatively. Okay? Tidiness with considerable attention to detail and a feel for efficiency is natural to these people. These are the aspects of practical wisdom that underlie their development in independence. However, if these people choose the negative path, they become emotionally unstable, reactive, and restless, resulting in frequent changes in home, career, or relationships. Mm, hmm. Yeah. It's funny how sometimes, well, you can start out drinking alcohol and sometimes it changes. The whole vibe changes and now it's very toxic and it actually is a negative path. For those of you that drink alcohol out there, it changes and suddenly you realize this is actually a negative path. Two eights. What if you have two eights? The sharpened power of assessment of the two eights on the birth chart can be either extremely beneficial or highly unsettling, depending on how positive the individual is, right? In matters demanding special care to detail, these people can excel like few others, but they must be aware that their perceptiveness does not allow them to become dic- dictatorial, right? My mind was already somewhere else. You don't want to become a dictator, right? Because of your overconfidence. This would give rise to inward emotional conflict, resulting in instability and extreme restlessness. Their search for truth and wisdom can stimulate such restlessness, but in a positive manner. It inspires them to travel, which we must realize is a wonderful source of knowledge and wisdom. Traveling is a wonderful source of knowledge and wisdom. If they don't travel when they're young, deep frustration can develop that exasperates their irritability. This can lead to a feeling of confinement, and only when travel opportunities are fulfilled do they eventually find some semblance of peace of mind. Interesting, right? They're on a truth seeking. They're not a truth seeking. This isn't the number 7. Okay, so with the 8, we know we're dealing with wisdom, independence, right? Spirituality, right? Mm. So when they say, because they said what dealing with the 8, we're dealing with tidy, clean people. So this is where we hear cleanliness is next to godliness. So on this wisdom energy, because this is about wisdom, spirituality, and wisdom, we see cleanliness is next to godliness, right? So you'll be very clean and organized, right? Everything got its place. And you'll just be more and more of that as you get double up that energy. Right? As you double that energy up, you'll get more and more of that. Well, what happens if you have 3 8s? Let's triple that energy. What happens then? The acute restlessness induced by the negative aspect of 3/8 is more frequently met than its opposite. To feel that life is pointless and frustrating is to be a victim of the most extreme pessimism. So these people need considerable love and guidance to encourage them to adopt a largely positive outlook on life. Man, how many of y'all don't have these type of people in your lives and you don't even know? You don't even know what their numbers are. After all, they must realize that life goes on whether or not they're positive and enjoying it. All they have to do is change their attitude and join the swim rather than bemoan the temperature of the water they haven't even tried. For the positive person with 3/8, great wisdom and that glorious feeling of independence underpins their daily living. Even though they prefer to be on the go, they have an inner stability and a joyousness that wins them many friends. Unfortunately, only a minority live this way, though it is to be hoped that this advice will win more converts. Absolutely. Let me know if you guys have eights in your birth chart, and how many do you have? Do you have one, two, three? We need to know. If you're part of our tribe, we need to know that if you have 3/8, we need to know that, right? We need to continue to help lift you up, continue to give you love and guidance to help you stay positive. You know what I mean? That's what we do for each other, right? It's a tribe. It takes a village, right? So let us know in the comments if you have eights, particularly if you have 3/8. What about if you have 4/8? Well, the last person to be born with 4/8 was on August 28th, 1988, and the next such birth will not occur until August 8th, 2088. They'll be extremely hyperactive, restless people. As infants and children, they should never be forced to sit and watch TV or told to sit still, for this unnaturalness for them will only lead to excessive frustration and ultimately quite irrational behavior from pent up emotions. Period. So, how could you fight against that? If you do anything other than that, you're trying to create a monster. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. How do you create? Do you think people are born evil or are monsters created? You see what I'm saying? So quit trying to make people do things that are not them, because that's going to create a mental snap in so many ways, a mask, and it leads to mental instability, as we know. So, absolutely. They should be taught to develop a sound sense of direction and be taken places as often as possible until they're old enough to travel on their own. Okay? They need to go places. This is too cute. That's cute, y'all. All right, last number. We're on number 9. We made it this far. We made it pretty far, guys. Yes. And if you're still here with me, make sure that you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you won't miss the next few episodes, right? We're still reading the book. We'll be out of this section, but there's a lot more to be learned in this book. So, thank you. Thank you. What about if the number 9, guys? A most powerful number. The Romans regarded it as the war number, symbolizing the planet Mars. We know it to be a number of war and prosperity. But so much depends on how it's used. As the number symbolizing mental activity, okay, let's pull this chart up again. hmm As the number symbolizing mental activity, 9 is also representative of the right lobe of our brain and its power of idealism, its spiritual component. Its physical counterpart manifests as ambition, and it's just that power that's caused so much international strife and confusion in the world in the 20th century. Think about it, right? 1900s. Come on. The 1900s is a 9. So we're talking about how the collective consciousness can shift based off of the frequency of of the time we're living in, right? So you're born into sin. You're born into the 19th century. This is your sin, the sine wave. Man, this is incredible. Do y'all like this stuff? Do you like knowing this? Do you like making these connections? Right? We think outside the box around here. So, let's see. From the beginning of this century, more people have been born without a 9 on their birth chart. At the same time, everyone will have at least 1, 2 on their birth chart, right? We're in 2026, y'all. This is 2026. So people born are going to have 2 twos, really, at least. Thereby greatly transferring the emphasis from the mind to the soul plane. Okay, because we went from the 9 and 1900s to the the 2000s. Okay, so in the midst of that, speaking of the energy, collective conscious in so many ways, everyone, so what happened from the change to the 1900s to the 2000s? It greatly transferred the emphasis from the mind, the 1900s, to the soul plane. In summary, more people will have deep feelings and there will be less egocentric ambitions. That's why we talking about Gen Z and all that. And the babies, right? The babies are like Gen A. It's starting all over again because they are not Gen Z. My nephew's not Gen Z. He's 11. Tomorrow he'll be 11. He's not Gen Z. They're like Gen Alpha or something, a whole new generation. So the people with the 2000 people starting from the 2000s, while we're talking about the age of Aquarius, 2012, right? So let's think about this. The age of Aquarius, 2012, we just see, two twos in that and a one. But so the 2000s was a two. 2012, we know that was two twos. People born from 22 is 2026 right now. That's two twos. In general, going from the 1900s to the 2000s, it add a little bit more soul to everything, a little less mind. So now people will have deep feelings and there'll be less egocentric ambitiousness. However, this will not become significantly apparent until close to the middle of this century, when those born at its beginning, right? Like people born in 2000 and on, because how old would they be today? 26? So those who were born at the beginning will be mature and responsible enough to take the reins of decision making. There's a fight going on now. They're mad at the boomers. Now, this is Gen Z we talking about. The Gen Zs want to take over. The boomers not trying to let it go. I be seeing them arguing and fighting and talking shit on Twitter. The boomer war and Gen Z war, I be watching it. I be looking on it. Be all on Twitter. I just be scrolling. But I see the arguments. I see what's being said. So, and now I understand also, they have more soul to them. They're feeling a little bit more. Why are y'all, this cat girl, they got all kind of arguments. They so mad at the materialism of it all, right? Let's talk about Gen Z in the comments. You guys been hearing about them? The Gen Zs and the boomers, and how the boomers won't let go and the Gen Zs are mad. And then talk about the Gen Zs with their feelings, right? I be hearing all kind of talk about Gen Zs in the workplace, right? All kind of stuff. They just not gonna work as hard. They feel like life should be lived, right? They're feeling people. They're not robots. Hey, maybe that's why they're rolling out the robots now, because more people have feelings and they're like, I'm not gonna live as a robot. You know what I mean? So they're like, yeah, we need some robots. Wow, come on, guys. Talk to me. I need some comments. Y'all need to start talking to me. Let's talk about this. Because we making connections over here. You know? So we need to talk about it. Jump in the comments. Jump in the chat, the Openly Occultic Book Club chat room. Let's talk about these things. Okay? So that's what's happening in there, and we see that. So now, what if you have one number nine? I was born in 1980, so I do. I was born on June 19th, though, so I have two nines actually. So what if you have one nine? Well, ambition, responsibility, and idealism. These are the three major qualities of the nine. So we're talking about ambition, responsibility, and idealism. This power has been at the foundation of humanity's driving force for the past century, responsible for our drive to find out more about life and to control it more. Not that it appears to have succeeded very well, right? Though we know infinitely more about our environment and what it is to be human than we did at the beginning of the 20th century, we also have more environmental degradation, right? Human sickness and suffering, and extensive famine and poverty than at any time in the past 2 centuries. What went wrong? Could it be that too much focus was put on ambition and not enough on responsibility and idealism? Could it be? The most beneficial application of 1 9 on the birth chart is to express it through balance of the three aspects. Any fanaticism to overcompensate for past errors or omissions can only lead to further reactions. The practice of temperance is vital here. Moderation in all things suitable, abstention from those unsuitable, right? As Pythagoras taught. So, moderation, wholeness, and balance, fam. Now, what if you have two nines like me? All right, I think you guys can sense this. Whatever they're about to say, you can sense this in me. Especially if you've been here from the beginning, you've been here for quite a while. You can see I have an intensity of idealism and zeal, coupled with serious thought. You know what I'm saying? That's me. They often express such an overzealous idealism that it becomes quite impractical to implement. Well, we can all dream, right? Keep the hope alive. In human design, my motivation is hope for my human design people, you know. So I have hope in my heart. I will continue to have that in my heart in this lifetime because my motivation is hope. So I won't give it up. But yeah, it could be quite impractical to implement the little ideas I be having and my dream for how the world, should be right now. They must be careful to maintain a sound level of practicality to balance the idealism, right? The inclination to become critical of others with a lower level of idealistic intensity must be guarded against and overcome if they're to find happiness in life. Yet these people are deep thinkers, and at the heart of all that they do, they wish to be helpful. I just think it makes sense if everybody giving birth today, starting today going forward, everybody in the labor room is given a natal chart for their baby, and they need to be given a natal chart too as the mom. I think they should come with giving birth at the hospital. Here's your natal chart for your child. Learn them. Even a birth chart thing, just like this. You know what I'm saying? It's easy. Give them a piece of paper while they're recovering in the labor room, and tell them to write out this tic-tac-toe chart for their baby and fill it in. Is that so wrong? That's not hard to implement. Why are they saying that my ideas are impractical? Why are they saying that? This is not impractical. Come on, we can do this. Go to the hospitals and tell them to do this now. I need my tribe hitting up the hospitals. Call them. Hey, do we get a natal chart when we give birth? Then next thing they'll be like, no, maybe we should. We'll let you know. You know what I mean? Like, let's just talk to them. Like what's going on with y'all? Y'all on the late show. Don't you know everything is frequency and vibration? Don't you know energy work is important? The metaphysical aspects of life is important. Don't y'all know that? Damn. I don't think that's too hard for women giving birth, to be given a birth chart and a piece of paper so that they can write down their little numerology grid for the baby and themselves while they sitting there recovering. But okay, that's just me. Hey, it could all be so simple, huh? So I need to stop being critical of others with a lower level of idealistic, you know. I gotta start. I gotta stop being critical with people who aren't as idealistic as me. And my intensity must be guarded against and overcome if I'm to find happiness in life, right? Yet at the same time, these people are deep thinkers, and at the heart of all they do, they just wish to be helpful and do. It just needs to be clearly expressed and not expected to be taken for granted. Okay? Now we know. Now we know. And now, what if you have three nines? The exceptional power of idealism and ambition of the three nines is extremely difficult to handle and can at times produce mental imbalance with those who don't realize their power. Okay? You're a whole superhero and don't even know it. You got superhero powers and don't even know it. So you having a mental imbalance. You're trying to be a regular schmegular person. You a superhero. Let me stop. We're all the same. Nobody's special. But you have your own unique gifts and you don't even know it. This problem can be avoided by recognizing the three nines in the birth charts of children. Right? You can start at the hospital if they just give it to you right there. And training these children to balance their expression more evenly over the three planes than so powerfully through the mind plane, right? It's not uncommon for these people, when acting negatively, to allow small things to become exaggerated out of all proportion. This often results in outbursts of temper, leading to loss of emotional control. Oh no. Even to the extent of threatening mental balance. Oh no. See? So we need to be teaching these people that. We need to teach people these things so they can have a better life, a higher quality life. The vital lesson here is to look at all things objectively and in proportion to their real value. This will help dissolve their judgment and permit the acceptance of small deviations from their rigid idealism. Okay? What about four nines? From time to time, we come across people born with four nines on their birth chart. Though they comprise only a small fraction of the population, they do still invariably need help. Among them, we generally find two distinct types. The most common, especially with the advent of modern hippieism, are those who live in a dream world of vague unreality. They've often dropped out of society because they could not come to grips with what didn't confer with their fanatical idealism. These are your off the grid types, a lot of them. Some are not like this consistently. They appear to be normal and conforming until, from time to time, they can take it no more and either take themselves far away or lock themselves in their homes for days or months on end. But these are quite harmless people who deny that anything is wrong with them and don't respond well to guidance. Okay? Your preppers, your survivalists, your off the grid people, I thought about it myself. So it's definitely a life nine, a number nine vibration. I've thought about it. It just makes more sense. Yeah, I have some other ideas that might be, a little impractical, idealistic impracticalness. I'm going to work on a free energy project this summer with my nephew. We're going to get some copper and magnets and work on free energy. Some Tesla. We're going to get some Tesla around here. Of course, I would like the world to know about free energy and the whole world be done with paying for energy and electricity. Of course. Today. Why are we doing this? But that's a little unrealistic to think that all systems are going to change just like that, just as fast as I want them to. Because we could have been done with this shit, in my opinion. You know? So, yeah, I can see if you got four of them nines, you ready to just disappear. But there's another type, because those hippies and preppers and survivalists, they're they're quite harmless, right? The other type are those who adopt an aggressive, somewhat belligerent attitude and appear to take pleasure in belittling others who, in their opinion, fall so short of their ideals. These can be the dangerous ones and should receive wise counseling before they become irreversibly lonely or do some harm to themselves or someone else in a fit of rage. Okay? All right. We heard it. We know. We understand it too now. And what of five nines? A few infants with five nines came into this world during September of the last year of the 20th century, right? 1999. A few infants with five nines came into the world in September of 1999. Understanding them will be almost an impossibility without the aid of numerology. And even then, helping them will be another even greater challenge. Everything written about those with four nines applies to the five nines, only with compounded significance, right? You still doubled up the frequency, you added more to it. It's unraveling even more. It's to be hoped that their parents are highly trained numerologists, for teaching them to be practical and compassionate will be the greatest challenge. Mm. Do you know anybody born in September 1999? Talk to me. Who here amongst us is born in September of 1999? Mm. You'd be about 26, 27 right about now. You might be listening. Are you angry as hell? So mad? I'm mad. I go on rants once in a while, but I try to time it, keep it to only about 10 minutes, 20 minutes at the most. I got shit to do. I can't be sitting here mad, ranting. I'm not going to change the world just sitting here ranting. I know it could be better, you know. But you're mad, real mad, huh? What are the ideas that you have that you just wish people would comprehend so that we could, so life could be much better? Because you only want to help. We know that. But you're just a little impatient, you know? Just, you're full of anger because of nobody understands. Nobody wants to make the world a better place for you and for me, huh? It's cool. What about the isolated numbers? Many birth charts of the 20th century will have more empty spaces than full, a situation that becomes even more pronounced in the 21st century. This will often lead to the isolation of one or more of the corner numbers of the birth chart, right? The 1, the 3, the 7, and the 9, the corners. It said this will lead to isolation of one or more of the corner numbers in the birth chart. These isolated numbers have special significance for people with whom have them on their birth charts. Okay. Mm. These isolated numbers will have special significance for people with who have them on their birth charts. Typo. With whom have them on their birth charts. So, what about the isolated ones? When the numbers 2, 5, and 4 are missing from a birth chart, and mine's are, and I have two ones, the number 1 will be isolated from all other numbers. As 1, okay, hold on. When the numbers 2, 5, and 4 are missing from a birth chart, as are mine, then the number 1 will be isolated from all other numbers. As 1 is the number symbolizing the expression of the human ego, its isolation on the birth chart reveals why these people so often feel isolated and misunderstood when they try to explain their feelings to others, especially if they have a single one. I have two ones, thankfully. So I could talk about, more than someone with a single one, my emotions and stuff. And I'm an emo generator, right, in human design. So I have a lot of feelings. Thankfully, I have two ones, so I can talk about them with others a little bit better than someone with a single one. Hey, that's what's up, right, guys? Okay. Um, so such birth charts will have a heavy concentration of numbers either on the mind plane and or on the arrow of activity, which we don't know about yet. We haven't read about that yet. A heavy concentration of numbers on the arrow of activity indicates that the person has trouble clearly explaining to others the concepts and or actions that they choose to undertake. Hmm, okay. If their numbers are more heavily concentrated on the mind plane, the person might be perceived as lazy or unreliable because so much going on in their head won't get translated into practical expression, or because they make commitments to do things that rarely get done. This can lead others to think that people with isolated ones are unreliable when, if effect, they are mostly unaware of this aspect of their nature. Unless it's corrected, it can lead to loneliness so that the isolated ego magnifies into an isolated person. Hmm, this is very interesting. Correction is easy. For every isolated number, the one quality missing that will integrate the birth chart and de isolate each number is that represented by the number 5 in the center of the birth chart, right? Because all numbers are connected to it. Generally, this implies the need for any person who has one or more isolated numbers to develop more love and compassion in their expression and to learn and to learn how to more freely express their positive emotions rather than bottle them up. When only the one is isolated, developing the qualities indicated by the two or the four can also help. For example, developing the intuition of the two so that it's so that the expression of the ego can be connected with the power of analysis. Let's say it again. For example, developing the intuition of the two so that the expression of the ego, which is the one, can be connected with the power of analysis, the number 3, and practiced with the improved logic, patience, and practicality of the 4. Hmm. This is a lot, y'all. This is a lot. I hope you guys are reading this and you're understanding it. Of course, you can also meet me in the book club chat room and get a free copy, a free PDF of this book. You have to meet me in the chat room and say, hey, can you give me a copy of that numerology book? And I'll email it to you. Easy peasy, right? As simple as one, two, three. So, because there's a lot of information, you're going to want to go back to it and look over it. Of course, you can go back to the videos, they'll be on YouTube, but hey, if you want the book, you know what to do. Right? So now what about isolated threes? When a single 3 or compounded threes are alone in the upper left of the birth chart with the numbers 2, 5, and 6 missing, the person is recognized as having the isolated 3 problem. This means that their strong mind potential can be easily diffused, for it is unconnected with the physical plane, and its powers are not readily carried through into practice. This problem can be severely compounded when more than one 3 is isolated, for then the imagination can run riot, and these people can become either paranoid or legends in their own minds. You know? The delusion of grandeur, huh? Correction is similar to that employed for the isolated one. The person needs to initially develop the power of the number 5 on their birth chart, as described above, followed by the development of their intuition through the power of the 2. This is similar to before, except that for the isolated 1 person, logic has to be brought to the ego. Now, verbal expression has to be linked to the mind's power so that it can be given vent. Okay? The third force desirous of development is that of the creative six. This will link the three with the nine, inherent in every birth date of the 20th century. In so doing, the arrow of the intellect, see page 60, is developed to give balance to the mind plane and the person's thinking abilities. Learning to embrace creative outlets is the best way to develop the six on the birth chart. When one or more sevens occupy the lower right corner of the birth chart, without a 4, 5, or 8 in contact with them, the sacrifices and lessons to be learned by the person are generally necessarily repeated. The experience of learning has to be translated to the mind for its lesson to be recognized and understood. Let me think something, see something. Is my 7? No, because I got 8 as well. So my 7 is not isolated actually. I was born in 1980. And anyway, I don't have a 7 on this numerology chart, right? This is just full of my 6 and my 2 1s and my 2 9s and my 8. But hearing about the 7 resonated with me. Facts. Okay, so I don't even have a 7. All right. So when one or more sevens occupy the lower right corner of the birth chart without a 4, 5, or 8 in contact with them, the sacrifices and lessons to be learned by the person are generally necessarily repeated. The experience of learning has to be translated to the mind for its lesson to be recognized and understood. But when this learning area is isolated from the mind plane, the same or similar lessons have to be repeated until, by force of frequency, they become recognized, right? Patterns and shit. This implies that these people can lose in health, love, or money possessions on repeated occasions until the appropriate lesson is brought home to them. Man, everything about the sevens be resonating with me. Though this is often hurtful to the sacrificing person, they tend to accept it as fate or inevitability. The hurt often seems worse to the friends and loved ones of the person who has to sacrifice. Remember, 7 is the number of philosophic understanding. So the person with the isolated 7 or sevens probably has more understanding of what has happened to them than those around them. Facts. To minimize the hurt or sacrifice, the person needs to develop the powers inherent in the numbers 4, 5, and 8. We've already covered the qualities of the 4 and the 5 with the aforementioned isolated numbers. But now we see that the development of the 4 helps the isolated 7 to unify with the ego expression of the 1 to feel okay about asking for help or guidance. At the same time, this develops the arrow of practicality so that the person develops a realistic approach to their life's experiences. Wow, this is good advice, and I'm going to have to look into this stuff. To develop the power of the 8 on the birth chart, the isolated 7 must become wiser when it comes to applying practical intuition through loving action. This also helps to develop their sense of independence and ultimately builds the arrow of activity. Here, the 5 and 8 work in total harmony, providing an excellent opportunity for the development of the person's soul plane. Nice. Good stuff. Well, what about the isolated nines? When the numbers 5, 6, and 8 are missing from the birth chart, and the person has one or more nines, as do all in the 20th century, the individual either exhibits impractical idealism, unrequited ambition, or both. This generally depends on the number of nines on the birth chart. If a single 9, it's usually the sign of unfulfilled ambition. If a double 9, impractical idealism. If 3 or 4 nines, both may prevail. From the corrective measures recommended for the other isolated numbers, the technique is clearly easy to follow. In this case, the qualities of the 5, then the 6, and the 8 need to be inculcated into the person's expression, right? Inculcated into the person's expression. Of these, perhaps the 5 is the most important if the person doesn't have a 7 on their birth chart. For the 5 will link the 9s with expression through the ego of the number 1. If they have a 7 as well, then the powers of both numbers, 5 and 8, should be developed for optimum connection between the ambitious idealism of the 9 and physical practical plane, right? So that's a lot, and I know you guys are going to all have to go back over that again later on once you decide to put all this into action, right? We're just learning about it now, and that's an important step, right? But knowing is just half the battle. We're going to have to implement this, so you're going to have to reread that a few times over the years. So yeah, definitely meet me in the book club chat room and come get a copy of the book. So to sum it up, remember, the power of your original birth chart is not as important as what you do to fill its empty spaces. Some of the most successful people in history have had some of the weakest and emptiest birth charts. Their success has only come about by developing the qualities that they lacked initially and to evolve towards perfection. That is the purpose of life, and nothing can direct us better than numerology. Wow. Mm. So, we learned quite a lot. Plenty to feast over, to chew over until we meet up again. I want to thank you guys for joining me. We're going to wrap this up. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe so that you won't miss the next video when we come back with that, right? And that'll be soon. We're going to get through this book quick. There's so many books that I want to read. So, we'll be back very, very soon so we can get through this. Thank you guys all for joining me, all right? Um, is there any last things I needed to say? Nope. I'll see you next time. Make sure you guys have a great day. Wholeness and balance.